Hello, friends. Welcome back to Love Wrestling. Spencer Love here with another Canadian staple, another individual I've been very excited to chat with in a professional setting. Of course, a former Quizplex champion, the executive producer of IWS, the head trainer at the IWS dojo, and a nearly 20-year vet of the independent wrestling scene above the 49th parallel, Shayne Hawke. Andrew joining me on the show. Andrew. I have to ask, man, did that come straight from Big Mouth? Because I'm a huge fan of the show. And
never watched it. I never watched it. I just started shouting my own name during Friday Night Speedball. Even though I wrestle as Shayne Hawke, I yell my shoot name, and that got over. So roll with it.
Why not? Ooh, I was gonna say, you go with it, brother, is what I hear. They say brother a lot too, so I'm just trying to fit in my best. It's great to chat with you though, man. Like, it's kind of odd to have to ask the question now, considering everything that came down in Quebec today. But prior to 11 a.m. Mountain Time this morning, how's it been to sort of get back into the full swing of things and be doing stuff like Friday Night Speedball and live events and the stuff that you weren't, and
for context,
for the next little bit, aren't able to do?
For context, as we have this conversation, Quebec just went back into full lockdown about an hour ago.
Yeah.
So like, just as we have that said, man, it was going so well. Everything was going so great. We sold out MTELUS, which is Montreal's like biggest concert venue other than the Bell Center where the Canadians play. We sold it out three times in a row. We had a great show at Soda. We're making TV. Everything is rocking and rolling. I'm back in the ring. I'm having some of the best matches of my whole life. And then they're like, you know what, Andrew, things are going a little bit too good for you, pal. So
you've got vacation days lined up.
My first day of vacation, they locked everything down. I can't win. I can't win. It's the first vacation I've ever taken ever, for the most part. Whatever. I'm gonna sleep a lot. It's fine. And like, things are going really well. Like Friday Night Speedball is a lot of fun. IWS is doing great. Our show on the Fight Network is kicking ass, and the ratings we're doing like 1.5 million per month. So like, that's pretty sweet, all things considered. IWS Dojo is going really well. We're producing some excellent talent that have just made their debuts in the scene. And like I said, everything's rocking and rolling. We have some big plans for Lethal Comics next year with my buddy Andy Belanger to write some stuff down. And then I don't know. Look, we've been through worse. We have. So I'm kind of taking it on the chin and taking it in stride in this case. It's we can't control what's happening anymore. We control our reaction to it. So I'm going to use it to find some way to grow. What that way will be, time will tell.
Grin and bear it, right? And you touched on a lot of stuff. You pretty well gave my liner notes for me, because I wanted to touch on pretty well everything you brought up there, starting, of course, with IWS and the Quebec scene as a whole, because I've never had the opportunity, obviously, to get out and see a show live in Quebec now or ever, really. So maybe just take me through a little bit of what IWS is, what they mean to you, and then a little bit on the Quebec scene as a whole. Where have you seen it grow over the last 15, 20 years in your time in the industry?
Well, I started in the Quebec scene in 2002, and I actually was trained at the IWS training center, the IWS Pro Dojo. Back in the day, the trainers were Sami Zayn, who was Stevie McFly at the time, and Beef Wellington, who's the announcer on our TV show now. And we didn't really like. I remember taking bumps on concrete, and the ring situation itself was just a shitty ring in a studio. There was no like governing committee or no real safety. And like, it was really, I mean, it was 20 years ago, and we've all heard the stories about how wrestling was 20 years ago, and wrestling really was like that 20 years ago. And thankfully we're better now, but it was the Wild West, and I was 13 when I started. So we can imagine how that went for me. The IWS, so I started in the IWS. Now I've become executive producer for it. I run the school. I wear basically every hat there is to run at that show. It's a very, very different place than it used to be. Wrestling is a lot more accepting now and a lot more for the art, whereas for the day, you know, guys used to have their knives backstage and not their video games, which again was true. But IWS has
certainly not for the better.
Definitely for the better. I mean, unless you have like a knife video game, maybe in a VR one day.
Knife Fight 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Like VR pro wrestler from the 80s or whatever. Like, can you do all the steroids? But now like we've taken it from like a shitty bar show, right? Like when IWS first started, it was like on mats with fake ropes in a bar. And now we're doing tours. We're on television in 22 different countries. We are selling out these massive venues and getting lots of worldwide attention, which I'm very, very proud of. And our dojo now is in my opinion, one of the best wrestling facilities that I've ever had the opportunity to visit. And I know that sounds conceited, but we have 2 rings in there. We have full Olympian strongman lift and like powerlifting equipment. I got certified as a personal trainer. So it's like, it's a real gym that is really safe that you could actually build something with. And I like to joke with my students that they become nouveau riche because they are coming into like, you know, seminars from NXT guys and like wrestling being accessible. Whereas to me, when I started, I'm 5'7", right? So like, as like this like tiny ginger kid, there was pretty much no chance of me making WWE back then. And now it's more accessible than ever. AEW was like not a thing, right? Like WCW had just died and TNA was just starting, but like there was no real opportunity when I started, whereas now we're a lot more connected at that level. And I think because of that, and because of the people in charge like myself, like Speedball, IWS owner Manny and stuff like that, who are taking this a little bit more seriously, who've grown up in the industry and have seen where it was and what it could be. We don't want our kids to go through what we went through, so to speak. So we built something a lot better. So Quebec wrestling has kind of experienced this leveling up in the last, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, I don't know how much we count the pandemic, but really since like TV started, which was we were on the local RDS station here about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. And then people, I think, started to take it a lot more seriously. And then AEW came out and NXT people got signed, like Kevin and Rami, Sami Zayn go to WWE. And then Matt and Jeff of the 2.0s, they go to AEW, and we'll get sent to the NXT and then to the AEW, the root beer wrestling, A&W. And
I like
because of that, like people start to take it more seriously. They invest more in gear, they invest more in their bodies, they stop fucking around on social media as much, and they start treating it like it could be a job. And as more people started that like trickling down effect of like the accessibility here, as more people did that, more people started following along like, hey, that's the way things should be. And now we have a world-class coaching staff. If I do say so myself, Speedball might be is arguably the best wrestler in the world. I've been around for 20 years and done everything there is to do. And I don't live off of my students. So there's, you know, like, hey, there's that, which makes me, I think, a cut above the rest of the others. But I think it's just that the level of professionalism in Quebec wrestling has increased significantly. And we really have some hidden gems on the Quebec wrestling scene that it's a tragedy that we don't share with the rest of the world, whether that be via language barrier or visa issues, stuff like that. The Quebec wrestling scene is very well slept on, the independent scene, that like people don't realize how good people are in Quebec. And I say that with my full chest. People like Le Tabarnak de Team, TDT.
So I was
like,
just going to bring up, yeah.
Right. Like they could be in AEW, no problem, but their promos are in French, you know? We have guys like Matt Angel, Ben Toll. I mean, Speedball just got signed, as you saw. Like, how many territories do you really have in Canada that have signed like Kevin, Sami Zayn, Matt, Jeff, Dark Order, Speedball? Like, these are all IWS guys, right? They all came through IWS. And that's not to say that IWS is creating these, like, I'm not taking credit for these people in any way, shape, or form, but I'm using that to illustrate what the level of competition is like to make it to the top of this particular scene, is that there are some real people with some real talent here. I can tell you about like the Kevin Blanchards, who was the former IWS Canadian champion, Matt Angel, who was our world champion, the Black Québécois, who people are just starting to wake up to now. Black Dynamite, and my student, Carl Jepson, who should be everywhere. This guy is amazing.
Yeah, man.
Zach Patterson, Frankie the Mobster. Like, there are some real serious names in Quebec wrestling, people who you can really put on a really, I put like some of our event quality, I'd easily put that up against the top independent products that they have out there in terms of match quality, and I don't think I'd be disappointed. Alex Silva, another guy, he was in TNA for a while with the Ric Flair, who did the shoot and signed him, right? But he's there too. He's a guy, and it's like, we've got this wealth of talent in Quebec. We really do. But we're hindered by the language issue, and like, so Quebec versus Canada, there's already that political thing, and then like Canada versus the United States, which is just like add on to it, and it makes people not as exposed to Quebec wrestling as they could be. But also like the profitable venues of Quebec wrestling are not necessarily the internet, right? Like we make a lot more on live shows and on TV, than we do on the internet. And like, we've made a fair run on the internet, right? Like, we've had independentwrestling.tv, and we have a YouTube page, and we have all these things. But we've seen that television is working a lot better. So we've invested our resources into that. And I guess we have more fans in India than we do in North America. But like, people are watching the product. It's still pretty good. I'm proud of the TV show. And like, a lot of people are like, I never had the chance to see it. Get the Fight Network. What do you want me to tell you? Like, these
pretty simple
episodes,
solution.
Right? They're quality episodes. This is quality wrestling. But I mean, I understand why people obviously don't just like, who has cable? Really? Who has cable in this generation? But like, people do, apparently. People have TVs. Really, I think the Quebec wrestling scene, like, one day I would love to do like a national all-star show, and like each a match from a fed in each territory, you know, like give me a BC match, give me an Edmonton match, give me like, or well, Calgary and Edmonton are the same thing, but like, give me like a Toronto match, like give me all this, and like put them all on. I consider Calgary and Edmonton two different things, because Calgary is hearts and Edmonton is not hearts.
Basically. It's pretty shitty. Like, our claim to fame was Benoit, but no, just
infamy.
Yeah, we're not going to take that one anymore, and I can certainly vouch for that one.
You're trying to pass it out to us. They're like, no, he was actually Quebecois. Did you know that? Did you know he's born in Quebec? Like, we're like,
we're just going to leave that one alone. Pass that buck off to somewhere else. Let's do it. I can't even throw her anywhere else. We're going to pass that one off. Do you think there was maybe like a turning point on that for you? Because as an outside guy, you know, I start to pay a little bit more attention to Quebec with guys like Sammy and Kevin Owens getting signed to WWE. But of course, you've got a lot more in-depth experience, that sort of stuff. And on the local level, maybe, like I say, was there a turning point for you where you started to say, we're starting to get some traction with stuff like The School or with IWS as a whole?
Well, honestly, like, IWS has been doing well in terms of the draw for a very long time. Even like when, Generico and Kevin were having like their famous four-way match in CCW where everybody started breaking out. There was Sexy Eddie, who came before them in Tournament of Death and like drank his blood. And like, that's how things started to branch out. But like, that was like 2005. Yeah, like, this was a long time ago, and the houses have been decent the entire time. I really do think that it's just we aren't as out there as we could be socially, because we're doing TV. But like, it's not like I can't give you a time period when it gets bigger. It's like starts getting bigger as this happens, but it's been progressively getting bigger for so long that you can't really like put a line in the sand and a date and say like, hey, as of this day, things went like this. Like, it's been going like this the whole time. That's due to obviously many factors, but I do think as so many of our countrymen, so to speak, make it to WWE and make it to NXT and make it to root beer wrestling, like a lot more people start taking wrestling a lot more seriously as a possible means of employment and stop treating it like a hobby. And as more people do that, that becomes a snowballing type effect, because then your peers are all taking it seriously. You're going to take it all seriously. Whereas like in my day, nobody thought WWE was a possibility. So nobody really took it that seriously. You know, like, we're going to do this for fun and we're going to like do drugs and drink. And like, it was a party kind of thing, you know? Yeah. It was like a hobby, like, what's the league called? Like a garage league, I guess, where like you get together with your friends. Beer league. Thank you. Right. Like that's what it was like. It was like a beer league of wrestling. And then all these dudes start going everywhere and we start bringing in people for seminars all the time. And like, here's the thing is that when that first group breaks out, and that's Sexy Eddie, Generico, Kevin, XS at the time, because he did like Jersey All Pro and that stuff, and then Matt and Jeff, and then me and the Dark Order, and like there's a good number, like there's a solid dozen Quebecois people that start going out and competing, and that gives us a bit of attention. Then we get like the Bucks Belmars and the Mike Baileys who start going places too. So there's always kind of been a Montreal presence on the higher level of the indies. It's just not like the eyes aren't there on us, which again I think just speaks to politics and to the language, and also like we could be doing a better job too. Like it's a whole socioeconomic thing, but once guys start getting opportunities, everybody else wants a piece of it. And so as you know, as we progress, as we get older, I'm able to like invite my friends from back in the day to do a seminar. Like, hey, WWE superstar Ricochet, do you think that you could do a Zoom talk for my kids? Yes, absolutely. Like, and now that's a thing that like my students have had, right? Like they're getting like Zoom seminars and NXT what's the word I'm looking for? NXT not
superstars,
but lessons.
Oh, I was gonna say NXT superstars if you want to use the
well,
term
that
from
too,
up
but
north.
I mean like specifically like getting coached by people who are hired and are looking to hire other people.
Yeah.
Right. Like we had Pete Dunne in for several seminars, and he was UK champ at the time. And like one of the reasons that he was doing these seminars was to scout and to teach what WWE wanted. So, you know, you're like getting into wrestling and all of a sudden you're like next to the WWE UK champion. You think this is pretty good. Whereas,
absolutely,
you know, like 15 years ago, like one, I would have laughed if you said WWE UK because I thought it would be your European title, which would have been a joke by then. But regardless, like even just working with somebody in WWE would have been monumental, right? Like unheard of. And now it's just right there. So as things become more accessible and people start taking themselves more and more seriously, it's been snowballing. And I truly think that we have not even hit our stride yet. And it's been over 20 years, but the way things are going right now, business have never been better. It's never been better. And I think a lot of that has to do with we have some experienced people in charge, but we don't really consider ourselves in charge either. I'm not being a capitalist when I say we're a family and I'm going to get you a pizza party. I do truly think that like in terms of IWS, we're a team. And because a lot of the people who come up through the dojo are our roster members now, it's like my kids are wrestling for me now. You know what I mean? Like they're like my wrestle kids and I'm going to take care of them. But also like we're able to shape and mold these young minds in the right way, and they can avoid mistakes that their coaches have made. For example, I broke my back. Maybe not the best thing to do.
I've heard that that's detrimental sometimes to a wrestling career.
Apparently it's bad. I was told.
Sources have indicated.
But like, for example, like I'm a personal trainer now. So if they want to get into shape, which nobody is forcing them to, but I mean, wrestling is an aesthetic business and it is what it is. But if they do, I can make them a program instead of them just like going to the gym and trying to figure it out, which is kind of what I started with, you know?
Yeah.
Knowing which matches to watch. And like even just perks along the way, you know, we work with Eventco directly, and Eventco is the promotion company who takes care of WWE here. And we've done stuff like Heavy Montreal. And because of like these things that we've done, we've been in charge of like being the seat fillers at WWE before when they come to town.
Cool.
Right. So like I have to figure out people who are the seat fillers. But like those will be my wrestling students, right? And they're like front row in WWE. They're not paying anything extra for that. I don't like, no, like it's
taking the comp tickets and flipping them for $40 a pop.
Right. Like, which is, I mean, I would be within my right to do so as a wrestling promoter, but I don't. Foolish. I could be rich by now. But like, and another thing that's good about the dojo is that I try to get my kids out there as soon as possible. And like, I will take pay cuts for them to come with me and like come to shows and stuff like that. So realistically, like you start training, you probably won't finish your training for about 2 years. But like a year in, if you commit to it, you start making money. So look at that as a discount to your tuition as it is. And I'm not taking your envelope at the end of the night, brother. I'll pay gas for my students to come with me to Toronto so they can have opportunities to break out and stuff like that. Or if I fly somewhere, like I'll take my students with me. And I think that like, I mean, they've been on TV in their first year in wrestling, wrestling like names and, like wrestling like people who have come from out of town, whereas like they're not 40 milers. And it was impossible not to be a 40 miler when I started in wrestling. Like, I think there were like 2 feds in Ontario at the time, maybe.
Yeah.
Now there's like 73. Like in Quebec wrestling, there's like a fed for each letter of the alphabet. But like at the time, right, there wasn't. And well, I mean, there was, but it just wasn't somewhere you'd go. Like they wouldn't have a real ring, or you'd be stabbed backstage or something like that.
All of them are no ropes matches.
Literally. But see, before that was a gimmick, that was like a thing. And then what they now they market it as no ring matches. And it's just like, Hey,
Kudos to you, Josh Barnett. It's pretty cool to see though, man, because like even again, as a fairly newcomer to the Quebec wrestling scene, you see stuff like Friday Night Speedball, and you get like, again, that corporate family feel to it. Like, take me through that and take me through the experience of doing something that is very different from your traditional wrestling show to keep it as vague as possible.
Man, honestly, like I've never been. Okay, I don't believe in traditional wrestling as people think of traditional wrestling. I don't believe it. Wrestling is a storytelling medium. If you've seen my work in Shakara, I was doing ridiculous things 20 years ago also. I participated in Kaiju Big Battel, even in one of their, like, wrestling is a storytelling medium. It's a Shakespearean work. And like the idea that it has to be like a real traditional tough guy show. I don't buy that. I think that it's what you make of it, right? So I just want to say that off. Like, I'm sure the Cult of Cornet people will get mad at me for this of some sort, but like, fuck off.
You assume I've got viewership.
Well, I think they're gonna watch me, right? I'm a guy.
That's right.
Things. Andrew, I love the idea of Friday Night Speedball. It was heavily influenced by Choco Pro, which I did not know of at the time, and Speedball, as the master of all things Japanese, at least in my regard, showed me this stuff and was like, hey, can we do this? And like, we were talking for a while about how can we do something wrestling wise that didn't require a ring in an arena, and like didn't require, how do we skirt pandemic restrictions and still wrestle, you know?
Yeah.
Of course it wasn't illegal what we did at the time, but you know what I mean? Like it had to be profitable too. And it was like something, and Speedball was doing this Twitch, and we have all these students. So we did the first Friday Night Speedball like live from the dojo, and Speedball wrestled Andy, Alex Mays, #sign Alex Mays, and the Sweetest Pete Cristara. And that was a really fun time, and it went really well. And I was like, hey, I want to be in the next one for sure. So then we just started doing this stuff at Lethal Studios, which is Bob Anger's studio. Like, it's literally his comic book studio. Yeah. And they kind of just built this thing with mats, and we just decided to have matches. And it's become more and more ridiculous as it goes along. And as we like kind of develop this lore, like me yelling my name for whatever reason, but it's just super fun to do. And I appreciate it because it gives a platform for people to perform in a different way than they normally would. And I think that's very important, to vary your training and your participation, and like try every different style and go to every different kind of coach and find out what works for you, because wrestling is entirely subjective. There will be people who will tell you that wrestling is objective and one thing is right and one thing is wrong, and those people are wrong. But they're also not, in a way, quantumly, but regardless, like they're wrong. Okay, just for the sake of it,
we're ending that one there.
Yeah. Like, we're gonna go into Roland Barth territory. But the idea of kayfabe alone implies that wrestling can be anything. So objectively good wrestling is good no matter how you present it to the audience. In the same way that like an objectively good fight scene is good no matter what it's set in or how like it's whatever the mood is. Like, if you have an objectively good, and when I say objectively good, I mean entertaining, essentially. And even then, entertaining is a misnomer, because like people like things for different reasons, but it's just like making you watch and making you pay attention. And you know, like these Hollywood fight scenes are not very different than what we do at Friday Night Speedball, except we're doing it on the fly. And it's very lower budget, of course. But if you can plan that stuff, like it opens up design space and creative space in professional wrestling that you would not be able to commit to in a ring type setting. So it lets you do something different while still being entertaining, right? But it's a way of leaning into the medium of professional wrestling as a storytelling medium, as opposed to trying to fight that, which I find that like the traditional wrestling is trying to fight the fact that wrestling is fake, right? Like, we're trying to present wrestling as this real sport with real things. That can't be the case, because wrestling is only real as long as the audience believes, and the audience has the prerogative of believing how much of it they want versus how little of it they actually want to suspend their disbelief for, right? But as long as I give you a context, if I give you a box to play in, and I don't break those rules of that universe, then you can still suspend your disbelief and engage. And I feel like Friday Night Speedball comes at you with a conceit of, it's going to be ridiculous. Here is this small platform. We are going to fake fight each other. But because we're making, like, we come out and say that right away, it lets you understand, and therefore you don't feel lied to. Whereas like the traditional Southern, like, faces and heels, one guy is angry and one guy is not, like, that is a genre. I can't say that word. It's a genre of professional wrestling, and it has value, and it has like we've seen the value that it has. But other ways of performing art, such as pro wrestling, other storytelling mediums, are always going to evolve. Yeah. And this kind of Twitch-based wrestling is something that's not being seen in North America, for one thing. Two, I think it's super fun, and like it seems very entertaining.
Oh yeah.
And like people are reacting to it, right? So it kind of like gives my students a way to work on their improv skills while still in professional wrestling and still in a safe setting, because they're in there with somebody like Speedball and I, or Veda, who have like, combined 70 million years experience. Yeah, like I feel like as long as you're honest about the rules of your storytelling medium, as long as that doesn't get broken, as long as you don't break the covert contract that you have with your audience and saying like, hey, as long as you believe this, the story will happen this way. If I break that in a way that's not like a not genre bending way, but like a way that like if pro wrestling was real and the referee stops counting and walks away for no reason, like, no, you promised me the referee would count to 3. And I think that's one of the problems of like the cult of cornet people compared to the non people, right? Like the people who just sort of like, this is fun, shut the fuck up. Is that people take wrestling to be their version of wrestling and not like an artistic medium, a spectrum of different ways to tell your story.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. It's a buffet at the end of the day, right? You don't have to take everything at it, but respect the buffet.
And it's closed down because of COVID. Another reason for it to be a buffet.
No. The comparison none of us wanted, but the transition. Take me through how you met Animal Bob Anger, because I heard the story and I loved the story.
It's a sick story. So yeah, like I was wrestling at Battle War, which is a company here in Montreal, and he would come to the shows, and I was at one of these Eventco comp tickets things. And I had sat down and we were like, cheering or whatever. And the people next to me were also yelling and getting into it. And they were like guys who I thought were my age, maybe kind of older, because Andy's old. But we're getting into it. And like, as we're just like talking about, whatever, but we're sitting next to each other. And like this, it was Andy Belanger. Like we just, in the entire Bell Center, had both gotten comp tickets from like different people, but we're in the comp section sitting next to each other. And he was like, man, I go to these wrestling shows nearby. You should come. And I was like, oh, which ones? And I used to wear glasses at the time. So like the reveal was a lot more. Wait, hang on, pause. Okay, pretend these are Poindexter glasses, right? I'm Superman here. Okay, pretend these are glasses. And I turned to him and it was like, well, so you go to the show? And he's like, yeah, like you should come with me. And I'm like, oh, which, like, you like the wrestlers there? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, do I look familiar? He was like, oh, I didn't have a beard at the time.
Oh, glorious.
Yeah, it was like very much like a Superman. Like I was like, hello there. And he was just like in. So then I told him about the dojo. He came to do his lesson with his colleague Dean, who was not able to complete the training. He died, but Andy stuck around. Now is the Animal Bob Anger, very talented wrestler in his own right, and the artist on the comic books that I did for WWE. And he's one of my best friends. Which I met him randomly sitting next to each other at a WWE show at the Bell Center. Like that's pretty cool.
Oh man, absolutely.
Good origin story.
Well, yeah, and especially like when you even say the origin story, ironically enough, like you would have assumed it would have been through comic books that you guys would have met. Right?
I mean, well, so no, it would have been wrestling. I don't have anything to do with nerd culture. I love comics, and like I genuinely love like all this stuff. Like I play Magic the Gathering several hours a day, but like I don't socialize with other nerds that I don't know in advance. So like I have my group of friends who I'll socialize with, but like I won't go to like Comic Con as a fan. Like I'll go to it to like as like I presented at Comic Con plenty of times, but like for somebody who's on stage all the time, like I don't like being in crowds. And I don't really like meeting strangers very much either. Like within a wrestling context, yes, but in my personal life, I'm a lot more reserved and shy to an extent, you know? So
It's very different being like a public figure, quote unquote, than being like an isolated individual.
And like I'm like I said, like I'm staying home for my whole vacation. I'm like, that was my plan anyway. Like I'm not going anywhere.
It's just nice to have the excuse now when people call.
Right. Like I don't have to answer Microsoft Teams for like a week and a half, which is sick.
Sorry guys, we have to stay inside. So
yeah. Oh no, God. I mean, it sucks, right? But like that's what I was gonna do anyway. And like I have like all my nerdy stuff. Like you see my rock water bottle?
Yep.
Right above
Glorious.
my head. Yeah.
Glorious.
Full size one. And like I have all this nerdy stuff, right? And like, but like I don't go to comic book stores. I don't go to like card shops to play. I don't like do cosplay. I don't. All my time is spent in wrestling. Like all my time is spent doing something for wrestling. And like I'm shy, and like some people are smelly and gross, you know. Like I know, you know.
Well, and in the nicest way to us, especially in the context of wrestling.
Yeah. You know, like individuals are very lovely. Individuals can be lovely. Crowds, not about it. Forget it. I don't want to go to a park and wait in line. No way. Forget it. Comic-Con, standing in line for hours at a time. I would just leave. I would leave.
No. You can get all that stuff online as is anyways at this point.
Forget it. So, but now and back to circle around what I was saying. Like Andy and I are like best friends now, and like we've wrestled each other. I came back specifically to IWS to do a series of matches to put him over, which I think we accomplished. I was very happy with. I put my first, I alluded to Heavy Montreal earlier, which is a metal festival that we do wrestling shows at here. And so like that was my show at first before I really started like collaborating with IWS. And like I made him the first ever Heavy Mania champion. The belt is a death trap because it was a pentagram and like literally could pierce your skin. And that was not intentional. But like I made him for a champion. I think he's wonderful. He's an excellent human being. I like good human beings. As somebody who, that's another thing that's changed in wrestling. There are a lot more good human beings in wrestling, people who are actually nice. Like when I first started in wrestling, like I got teased for being too nice, and not in like the nice guy way, just being like too friendly, I suppose. Like, you know, like not having a knife in my suitcase.
Not being surly, that's a bad thing.
Also, I'm like 14, so what the fuck? But anyway. Now
important context,
right? Like they're like, why aren't you like a 36-year-old man chewing tobacco and firing guns? And I'm like, sir, I am literally in high school.
I can't go and buy a pack of cigarettes to smoke.
I probably could. It's Quebec. Let's be honest here.
You said it, not me.
There's a lot of nicer people in the industry. I've met some very lovely people recently that make coming to work a lot more pleasurable. And I don't know if that just comes from working with Speedball on a regular basis and people are afraid of him, or if wrestling has just become nicer as a whole. I think that also. I did a seminar, like I did one of Danhausen's character seminars, because I'm still always doing seminars because I want to learn. You know? And like the first point that he made was just like, be nice to people. And I was like, I'm in for this seminar. Hell yeah. Like, yeah, just be nice to people. Why don't we just do that?
Right.
But I mean, also that we're discounting the benefits of chewing tobacco and carrying a knife on you at all times. So who are we to judge?
That's exactly it. You've got to treat both of those things as exactly equal.
Yes. Equivalent.
Definitely the exact equal amount of
the same thing. Being nice to people and chewing tobacco and stabbing people are the same thing.
Yeah. You know, you got to treat 6 of one and half dozen of the other.
Right.
Of course, I have to ask about Speedball because we've talked about him a ton. Obviously, you and I both know him to some degree, whether one way or another, but a great guy, a great professional wrestler. Here's the opportunity. Put him over or I guess bury him. I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
I can bury him, right? But he's going to see this, I guess.
Again, you assume we have viewership.
I'm sure he's going to see it. Veda Scott will share it, and then he will watch it, and then he'll hit me up like, hello, Andrew. Why did you say those things about me? Speedball, he's the best wrestler in the world. It's just, it is what it is. Like people said, like it's not even subjective at this point. He's just so talented. It's ridiculous. Yeah. In 2014, I did this version of Heavy Montreal, like the Heavy Mania show, which is basically a live action Mortal Kombat. This was years before Lucha Underground, by And it was for like the fate of the universe, and there was a comic book tie-in. I made everybody gear, gave them new characters, and it was a tournament for an iron gauntlet, which was the most powerful weapon in the universe, which they then used in Lucha Underground right after I had hung out with Vampiro.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in Marvel.
Oh, no. But it kind of did look like an Infinity Gauntlet, to be honest with you. But like they literally had a gauntlet of power in Lucha Underground after I told Vampiro that. So I don't know, man. No, but anyway, so I had Mike Bailey, who was not a name yet, win that. This was like 2014. And I remember like as he was going out the curtain, I said, like, look, you're winning because you earned it, because you're the best wrestler in the world right now. It's just a matter of time before people know. And then I remember he said to me, yes, well, it's definitely a pleasure to be part of professional wrestling when it's done right. And I think that like encapsulates our relationship, is that like he's the best wrestler in the world, but he does the right thing. And I have prided myself on not being a piece of shit my whole career. And I'm also quite talented too. And I have lots, like, I do want to do things the right way. So we have this mutual beneficial relationship. And also like we're both martial artists. He's continued obviously, but I did martial arts for a number of years. And we both love wrestling, and that's about it. Like we're both nice people who love martial arts and wrestling. And that's really, friendships have been forged on much less. So I've been fortunate enough to work with him for 15, 17 years. I don't know how long he's been wrestling for, but so his older brother was in the same wrestling class as me. His older brother and his older sister were both in my wrestling class.
Very cool.
In 2003. And then he comes along like 2 years later. And like we've had matches over the years and everything has been great. Now I think we've really hit our stride because we have a similar vision of professional wrestling. There are things that differ, yes, but we're both kind of like honed in on the same focus. And I think that's what makes us an effective team. And we both genuinely care about wrestling, and we genuinely care about the people who we teach wrestling to. And that also makes for a powerful coaching staff, let's say that. And of course, we're both very good wrestlers. Like he can, I would wager that in terms of technical mat wrestling, I could out wrestle him. I'm just saying. But in terms of like banger matches, nobody's touching Mike Bailey. It's ridiculous. The things he does is ridiculous. It's like, just leave some talent for the rest of us, please. Just take it easy, Like, what do you have to have every good match ever? You have to have every belt. You can't have one for any other people. It's kind of rude.
Yeah, I'm gonna title the article coming from this Speedball Mike Bailey, Hoarder.
Nice.
That's how we're gonna get the clicks.
Can we write Hoarder, but like WHORD dash? Huh? How about that? You want a clickbait?
There we go. We got to hire you to write our headlines, man.
Hey, man, I am a professional writer, sir. Okay.
Then you're probably commanding too high of a wage for me on that end of things. But before we close her out, I do want to ask, and of course, give me as much as you want or as little as you want on this, but you obviously were with Chikara at a time where Brodie Lee was wrestling there. I know you guys had your match together, and here's the cheap plug for checking out the Smark and Friends podcast, of course, with this handsome gentleman and Zach Ralph, where they went through and went step by step on the aforementioned Brodie Lee match, but just maybe some memories. Or Zach Ralph is the name he's going by on here. There we go. That's cool. That's the work name, brother.
Right. Okay.
I suppose they call it.
All right. Okay. I didn't know Ralph.
It's a good name. It's a good name. It's got some mileage behind it, but either way, just wanted to ask some memories and your experiences with Brodie Lee coming up on the 1 year of his passing.
Did I tell the Dave story on that podcast? I think I did, but I'll tell the story anyway, because it's my favorite Brodie Lee story. Brodie Lee, so when Brodie and Cheech and Cloudy and like those guys from the upstate New York area would come to Montreal, especially for IWS, like they would stay at my place quite often. Yeah. Even like back in like the regional small time days, people like what was his name? Shit, it was Orange Cassidy now, but like it was JC Ryder, I think he was, and like Lucky 13 and like those guys would all come and do the Montreal. Phil Stamper, these guys, and Brodie and other John, so Cheech, and then Cloudy would often stay at my parents' house. I lived with my parents. They had a big house, and like, you know, we'd let them stay. Brodie introduced himself to my mom as Dave. Didn't tell anybody about the joke. It was just, that was funny to him. And he called himself Dave. And then like has given her calls on her birthday to like wish her happy birthday, and just kept up this rib that his name was Dave for no. And I thought for the longest time his name was Dave, and then like I was talking about him with I forget who, and the other person who corrected me was like, no, his name's John, and I was like, what? Like records, my whole universe realigned. So for some reason he just told my mom his name was Dave and just never corrected the joke, and like didn't tell anybody about the joke. It was just to make himself laugh. He's like, yeah, I'm Dave. Which is pretty hilarious when you think about it, and like looking back on it now I think it's amazing, but like, why Dave? We'll never know.
That's incredible. And, you know, obviously I never had the pleasure of meeting the guy, but that sounds so thoroughly in character for him. I
love
love
a sweetheart. He was a sweetheart. And like, I can just see like the little tiny smile forming on the side of his mouth. Like, my name is Dave. Yeah.
Almost like twisting the mustache, all
right?
whiplash like.
What kind of a name? Anyway, Dave's not here, man. That was a really good one. Yeah, we had that match in IWS. We had a whole like program in Shikara. There's this famous cage match he has with Claudio Castagnoli, now Cesaro, and I do a run-in in that match. And Claudio was very, very specific about. So I'm running in with a chain over the course of the last several months of story. Brodie is aligned with myself and my partner at the time, Mitch Ryder. We were the Fabulous Two, and like he's been feuding with Claudio. It's a whole like Shikara has never been accused of not having enough lore. Let's put it that way. But I make a run in that match, and like I'm in my street clothes, but with my feather boas because I was from Memphis at the time. In that storyline, my parents had died, and I was an orphan and adopted into Memphis culture. So my name was Buck.
Like you said, never a lack of lore. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like that's what I mean. Like, and that wasn't even like, there's so much more. Anyway, so I have this chain. I'm gonna like toss the chain in, right? But Claudio is supposed to take it from me. So he wanted me to tuck the chain into my pocket and then start climbing the cage. I was so worried to miss my cue because this was like a main event match, a blow off, and like I'm 18 years old, you know. I don't like this is at the arena too. This was like a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
So I run out and forget to tuck the chain first. I start climbing and then realize mid-climb and tuck the chain and then keep climbing. So Claudio doesn't actually ever have a chance to like, the spot never gets fucked up.
Yeah.
But Claudio was so hot backstage. He was so mad at me. He was like, I told you one thing. You had one job just to tuck the chain and you couldn't even do it. And like, I was just like mortified. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Claudio Castagnoli. You're my favorite wrestler. Don't yell at me. He wasn't actually yelling though. He was just like sternly talking to me. You know,
he wasn't mad. He was disappointed, which
yeah,
almost seems
but like
worse.
real disappointed.
Oh no!
I just remember turning in like Brodie like walking in. He's like, "I'll just finish this match." He's all sweaty. He just like taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Don't worry, kid. I'll talk to him. Don't worry, kid. I'll talk to him." And then he calmed it down. I guess it was very important. I tucked that chain in my pocket first and then climb. Apparently. But obviously I went to business for myself and started shooting and taking the chain out on my own. But he was just like, it's okay, don't worry. He was a very nice man. He was somebody that I was very happy to know, and that I feel blessed that I had the chance to interact with and spend so much time with over the years through his period as the Right Stuff Brodie Lee wearing tassels to Dirty Trucker, who that gimmick was actually was made by Mitch Ryder, the aforementioned Mitch Ryder, who was my tag partner, who also passed away. But we were like prime and center on the birth of that gimmick as well. And then everything he did other things that are very cool, obviously. You know, being super famous, one of the best wrestlers of all time. Yes, very cool, I suppose, right? But overall, solid human being. Very, very happy that I got to spend the time I did with him. And I feel like, unfortunately, that is the case with a lot of people in professional wrestling, which is why it's important to appreciate what we have. And even though the pandemic is taking wrestling away from us for a few more months, it's the low points that make it so that we can enjoy the high points as much as we do. So we have to kind of take it in stride and make sure that we, we prepare for the next high spot. Gotta get to the next town, brother. That's it. Gotta get to the next town because hey, you don't make money talking to the boys. You make money getting to the shows.
That, my friend, is a hell of a way to close off a hell of a chat. I appreciate the heck out of it. Like I said, man, you've done it all as far as it goes on the Quebec scene. You've even crossed over here to Alberta in some way and taken the Quizplex championship, and can't wait until the next one. Andrew, I can't wait until the next time that we get to chat, we get to hang out. Hopefully either you make your way out here or I finally get the chance to visit for a wrestling trip. But until then, friend, I know where I can keep track of you, but where can other people keep track of what you're up to, what the IWS is up to, and everything in between?
Please find me on the social medias at Superstar Hawke. Hawke has an E at the end. I don't go by Superstar anymore, but I'm not going to change my handle, so suck it. At Superstar Hawke on Instagram. I just recently got TikTok. It's still very cringe. I don't understand it, but I'm doing my best. You're going to find the IWS at IWS Hardcore on every single platform. That's International Wrestling Syndicate Hardcore. We have a sweet YouTube page. There's like so much free wrestling on there that people are not watching. Right. There's like some really cool stuff. Go check out youtube.com/IWS Hardcore, IWSshop.com. And then our sponsors, of course, Prohibition and Laga Bière, who we could not do this without. Does it show that I say this in every generic entry, like throw closing for every episode of IWS TV? Speaking of which, the Fight Network, if you are able to check it out, hey, Fight Network, that's FIGHT, not FITE. Those are two different things I learned. But please check us out. Check out our episode. They're on Friday nights at 8 o'clock. Send me a message. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you hated. I'm executive producing them, and I would really like some feedback if people want to check it out. We're getting lots of views from people who are not in the industry. Maybe I'll get some from people who are in the industry too. And if you're a wrestler looking to wrestle for IWS, please do the bare minimum of research and like send me a Google Drive or something. Don't just like send me a DM, be like, hey man, you got a spot? Because like I'm getting tired. I know anyway. And then of course check me out on Friday Night Speedball at twitch.tv/SpeedballBailey. I will most likely be giving Cartier, NDG, Lawrence Cartier more stunners.
Oh, good. I was scared that those were going to end with this interview commencing.
The talk was so good that Stunner's gonna have to continue. And just like Pete Rose, every time that he shows up, he's in trouble. Although shout out to his cookie making skills, because he was quite the baker. That is true.
Cookie making skills, and he also downed some of that Da Bomb hot sauce on Saturday night on one of our streams.
The psycho.
It was tough. It was a tough watch. Lawrence, a really pleasurable watch. I guess it was a tough experience. Really great watch.
Is really evolving into the stunt granny he's always meant to be. That's for sure.
I couldn't have put her any better myself, friend. I thoroughly appreciate the time. And if you guys are out there, you want to support great wrestling and support the great people in it, then you would be covering both off by supporting Shayne Hawke, the IWS, Speedball, Mike Bailey, Beta Scott, and any of the number of people we've chatted about throughout this show. Support good wrestling. Support great people in it. I wasn't going to put myself over. I'm happy you did for me, though.
I did it.
Thank you. It's always appreciated. Well, you're our Quizplex champion, so we should be putting that over as well. Friends, if you want to follow Love Wrestling, like Hawke suggested, make sure you follow us wherever audio is played or videos are viewed at Love Wrestling CA, or you want it all in one fell swoop, put a dot in between Love Wrestling and CA, takes you right to our website where everything can be found. For Shayne Hawke, for Andrew. Spencer Love. Thank you for tuning in, friends. We'll see you on the next one.